Welcome to the Insider's Guide, the show where we explore how young people can break into exciting careers, whether that's in tech, startups, sports, medicine, etc. Today, we're focusing on something every high schooler wonders. How do you actually stand out, get into top colleges, and build real-world impact before you even graduate? I'm Ahan.
I'm Ashraf. And I'm Aditya. Our guest today is someone who's done all of that and more. He's a student at Georgia Tech, a software engineer at Casca, which is a Y Combinator-backed startup that just raised 29 million in funding. He's co-founded multiple ventures, including Scholarships, a college admissions newsletter with over 1,000 readers, Code for Cause, which connects hackers with nonprofits and Boxmates, which generated thousands in revenue in just 2 months. He's also conducted published machine learning research, led nonprofit projects, taught hundreds of students, won the Congressional App Challenge, and placed first at DECA Internationals, and balanced all that while being a varsity basketball captain and an honor student.
Mithil, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, so how this is going to work? We're going to start off with our guest background and journey section. So it's split up into five different sections. That's going to be our first section. So let's just start from the beginning. In high school, you were balancing academics, leadership, research, and multiple startups as well. What do you think the key factors are that actually helped you stand out in these college admissions?
I honestly think that the most key part of my entire college admissions package would probably be my history of going to hackathons. Um, I've been going to hackathons since I was like 9 years old, and it's not something that you typically see other people doing. And I think I wrote a couple essays about that. I was like my one like number one or number two extracurricular on my activity list. And I think that's what I think personally helped me stand out from a lot of people.
Great to hear.
It's great to hear, Mithil. Let's go to our next question. Let's go ahead and talk about numbers for a moment. You took advanced courses like multivariable calculus, finance, and game theory, plus dual enrollment at both Mission College and UC Berkeley. What was your weighted and unweighted GPA all throughout all of this and your class rank at your high school?
Yeah, so my high school we actually didn't do any class rank. Um, but based on what I've talked to other people about, I think I'd be around the halfway point, maybe like top 30, top 40%. My weighted GPA was like 4.7 and my unweighted GPA was 3.96. For context though, I did go to like a pretty competitive private school. So that's why I mentioned that that wasn't, you know, at a lot of other schools that might be at the top, but at my school, I was pretty much in the middle.
That's great to hear, Mithil. So let's talk more about your application strategy. So, pretty much what colleges and majors did you target and why? And which of these colleges did you end up being accepted to?
Yeah, I actually applied to I like 26 different colleges all over the spectrum from like in-state state schools, UCs, out of state schools, and also um, Ivies and like Ivy League level schools such as MIT, Harvard, Duke, Stanford, Cornell, Columbia, CMU. Um, the schools that I got into were largely public schools, actually only public schools. I got into Georgia Tech, which is where I'm currently enrolled now, the University of Wisconsin, Madison, the University of Washington. Um, I got into the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Michigan. I actually did not get into. I got into Maryland, UIUC. I got into Santa Barbara too. I got into Purdue. I got waitlisted from NYU, and that's about it. Got rejected from everywhere else.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So now we're just going to go ahead and move on to the main discussion. So this is where all the major questions are at. So let's start off with our first section, which is building startups before college. So diving into more of your entrepreneur side, you've co-founded CoUnity back in 2020, and then later created Boxmate, Code for a Cause, and now Scholars Groups. So what pushed you to keep starting these different types of startups and nonprofits from early on?
yeah, sure. Great question. I think for a little bit of context, if you guys don't know what a hackathon is like, it's like 200 people, sometimes more, sometimes less, but around 200 people come and for a whole day, sometimes multiple days, sometimes an entire weekend, just creating something. And it could be anything from like a hardware project where you like, create a little robot or maybe just a little device that you pin to yourself, all the way to like software projects. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing that since I was like 9 or 10 years old. And so, just growing up in that environment, it's like, every month I'd be going to these hackathons, and it's just like, oh, I'm building something this weekend, building something that weekend. And so, eventually during the pandemic, I went to this one online hackathon. And after that, I was like, I got so much time on my hands now, like school is shut down. I just built something pretty cool this last weekend. What if I invested some time in it and try to turn this into like a real startup, get some like actual revenue going, sell this to customers, like create some real revenue if that makes sense. And so that's how CoUnity came to be. And unfortunately, that kind of flopped, and we never actually got a real customer. But we put a project out there. We got incorporated as a legal business. Um, but that is how I got my start. And then after that first start, you fall back down, you fall down. But in going to all these hackathons, I didn't win every single one. But after losing the one, I reflect on it. I think about what went wrong, and then the next weekend or the next hackathon that I go to, I turn it around and I'm like, okay, I can do something different this time. And it's kind of like that outside of the hackathon world and the real entrepreneurial world, where after CoUnity failed a couple years later, I was like, I took those learnings from CoUnity, I applied it to Boxmate, my second thing, found some success, found some things that didn't succeed. Next thing, Code for Cause is a nonprofit. I consider it success because of all the things that I learned from the previous ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to get into perspective as well, like how many different hackathons do you actually attend throughout your high school years?
Throughout my high school years, it'd be around like 15-ish.
Okay.
So about like one every month, and then I would take like gaps sometimes though for like 3 or 4 months where I didn't go into any.
Got it. Okay.
So moving on to our next question, let's go more into depth now. For Code for Cause has connected 1,000 hackers with 15 nonprofits that solve real problems. What was the most impactful project that you saw come out of this initiative?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the ones that I'm most proud of is there's this one nonprofit in India that runs an after school program. It was called Reach Beyond, and they were really struggling after the pandemic with hiring volunteers to help tutor their students. Um, and so what we did was we were able to create an app that allowed um, anybody in the world to volunteer as a tutor virtually. And so we put together a ton of like tools to help them throughout that. We have whiteboard tools, video tools, slideshow tools, everything online just to help tutors from anywhere in the world. So we had people in like Europe, people here, some other people in India also who just weren't able to go to this place where the actual tutoring site was, and the nonprofit tutoring site, the actual nonprofit that did the tutoring had like 80, 90 students, and they all used this to like get help with their math homework, get help with learning about anything.
It's great. That's a great idea you just mentioned. Yep.
It's great to hear. So moving on to Scholar Scoops, which is a brilliant newsletter for high schoolers, by the way. What gap in the admissions process did you see that made you start it, and how did you grow it to 1,000 subscribers so quickly?
Yeah, honestly, at the start, I didn't really see a gap. What led to the start of it was actually my friend and I. We've been friends since like fourth grade. We've done everything together. We've gone to hackathons together. We've done robotics together. But essentially, during the start of the college application process, around the start of senior year, we were both doing our research because that's a really important step of applying to college. And while we were going through that, we realized that we should. We're just sharing notes with each other every day. I'd be like, "Oh, look about this school I found out. Do you know like this school reads applications this way?" Or, "Oh, I found this little article online. They have some nice tips in there." Or, "Here's an example essay that I think worked really well or didn't work well." And so we'd share this every single day. We're like, if we're sharing this every day, why don't we just share it with the whole world? So what
Yep.
it started off was, we just share every day what we as high schoolers were experiencing going throughout the process. And then later on, at first we actually thought that, oh, what makes it so good is that it's daily. We're giving out this information at like a consistent pace. Everybody in the morning can wake up and read this. We learned later though that what actually separated us was that and this is the gap that we're filling, is that it was admission information for high schoolers from high schoolers. And I don't know if, as what you guys have noticed, but as you go through this process, you've probably seen like, there's so much information from like college advisors here, consultants there, and like they have other intentions just to get into college, right? Their intention might be to make money or sell advertisements. Our intention was not that. Our intention was sharing information for high schoolers from high schoolers. In terms of the second question about how we grew it to 1,000 subscribers so quickly, I think it was just really all about like putting out good content out there, telling people to tell their friends, and honestly going school by school and like sharing it with everyone at that school, telling them to subscribe.
Got it. Okay. So last but not least for this section, we're gonna go ahead and talk about Casca. So a couple of days back, I believe I saw that post where you decided to actually take a gap year at Georgia Tech. So I wanted to talk about that. So just walk us through that decision. What made you choose startup life over staying at Georgia Tech?
For sure. Um, so my high school, we end our classes in February, and I know that's not an opportunity that everyone has, but Um, I had, in February, starting from February to the end of August, a 6 month summer break. And I was like, I should do something with this time. And I know that like 5 to 10 years down the line, I want to be running my own startup, right? Like I want to be able to have something that creates like true value. And I was like, what better way than to get an internship at, some startup? And so I found this startup online called Casca. I applied there. I got a position there. And immediately I was like, okay, this is not just an internship. Literally, like my second day, I was going and we were like looking for new offices because we were growing so fast. And, then all of a sudden I was like flying to North Carolina and like Utah with the whole company. And I'm just an intern in like my second week at this point. And as I went through it, by the time it was in August, I was like, wow, like I've learned so much over these last 6 months. Imagine how much I can learn in the next year. And so I understand that college will still be there for me in 1 year. So I figured this was a no-brainer decision to, um, move that enrollment to next year and instead focus on working on Casca, learning as much as I can about, how to create a startup, how to grow a startup, because that is what I want to do 5 to 10 years down the line.
And just about that, so Casca is located, like the office is located in San Francisco, right? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So is there any like, did that like change your decision anyhow? Like that, the fact that it's located in San Francisco or just the
Yeah.
location?
I mean, I go to school in the Bay Area. I've known since like I was a kid how privileged I am to be here. Like this is where tech happens. This is where innovation happens. Mainly in SF too nowadays with the whole AI revolution. And so Casca being in SF, I think was just a given. And I feel like yeah, if it was somewhere else, who knows what would have happened. Um, but yeah, being in SF for 1 year, 1 more year is also very crucial just because of the people you meet. Um, yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Sounds great. So now let's move on to your awards, research, and hackathons in high school. So Mithil, you have some impressive awards in your book. Let's start off with your first place awarding the Congressional App Challenge from District 18. Can you explain in depth what you built and how you stood out from all the other competitors in your district to achieve the number one seat?
Yeah, for sure. So my friend and I, his name's Anab Bordia, we built this app together. It was called Coursify. And where this came from was um, this is like very early in like the AI GPT revolution. We got access to Google's like state-of-the-art models, and we were like, okay, we got to use it somehow, and we didn't know like where to start with it. So what we decided to do was reflect on like what are some things that we could actually benefit. And we were both students at the time. We were in like 11th grade, and we're like, one thing that we're doing is there's like a lot of learning. Um, and I think that's mainly taken care of when you want to learn structured things. Like you can just go to Khan Academy and start learning calculus or chemistry. But if you want to learn something fun, something like how to sew or, how to crochet or something like that, you can't really find like a Khan Academy style course about that. But now that we had AI and like technology, what if we could create that? What if we could, um, in a sense, build something that allows you to create a Khan Academy style course about anything? And that's where I our idea started from. That's what our app turned into. In terms of how we stood out, I would say it was just like a really strong focus on like the use cases for this. So in our video demonstration, we talked about learning about politics because that isn't something that we really learned that deeply in school. I think that might have also really, um, you know, connected with the people reviewing it because the people reviewing our applications are of course from the government, people from the congressman's office.
Yeah.
So I think that's how we were able to stand out.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really important to all the congressional competitors out there. So, moving on to our next question, we're going to talk about another big organization, which is DECA. So, you placed first at ICDC amongst 22,000 students in the event of entrepreneurship, decision, team making. So, could you just explain to all the viewers out there, what separated you amongst all those other competitors? And if there's someone watching, how can they achieve first place at an ICDC event?
Yeah, honestly, with DECA and role plays specifically, I can't really speak that much to writtens, but for role plays, it's really all about understanding that you're telling a story and you're putting on a show. And so I've talked about this on many other platforms before too. You can feel free to check those out. But um, it's all about like the judge is there, they're listening to you for 15 minutes. You have to put together a way to stand out from all the other people there that you're that are also giving the judge 15 minutes of their time. And so everybody is going to go through the same PIs, the same situation, the same, oh, if I was in this situation, I would do this. What you want to do instead is genuinely interact with them, put on a show. So what my friend and I did, we would literally like, we would, we'd like tear paper apart and like crumple up paper and throw it away, throw it off the table, just genuinely like entertain the judge for like 15 minutes, or for us is a TDM, so sometimes shorter or longer, and we have more time to prepare. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Like that example you talked about throwing the piece of paper off the table. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Entertaining the judge.
Definitely, definitely. So, furthermore, within DECA's finance track itself, there's another event in the stock market game where you place 17th out of 2,107 107 teams in the stock market game. So, could you highlight some of the specifics, such as key investments and decisions that got you there?
Yeah, honestly, this was in like 10th grade, so I can't really speak to the actual investments and decisions, but our overall strategy was just finding stocks that we found really undervalued or really overvalued, and then placing trades based on that, and then also placing some really smart like bond trades based on where we thought the market was going to go. So, for example, during that time, there was a very like inflationary market, so we placed bond trades based on that. Um, in terms of our investment decisions, a lot of them were just short term. And these sort of like time based competitions where it's like 3 months, just to create how much returns you can. It's a bit hard to do that off long term stocks because they're just not as volatile and they don't move that much. But if really focus on what's going to move tomorrow, maybe based on earnings or based on mergers, acquisitions, you can really make some good returns based on that.
And if you are able to recall, so I think with these competitions, you fluctuate a lot in your places. Like you can go all the way from first all the way to like 100. So do you remember, were you always consistent, like consistently in the top 20? Did you ever fluctuate to like the low hundreds? Where were you at?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. At the start, yeah, we started pretty low, but I feel like once you're like almost like 2, 3 weeks in, it's pretty stable. And once we were like 2, 3 weeks in, we were consistently in like the top 20. We moved sometimes all the way up to like the top 10, but the whole time we made our decisions based on the fact that okay, if this investment were to go bad, worst case scenario, would we drop out of the top 25? For context, top 25 is what qualifies you to go on to ICDC and represent your state. So we just throughout the process we're like, okay, if this is going to happen, if this investment that we're making is going to go bad, will we still be in the top 25? And we always made sure that we were.
Got
Got
it.
it.
And also, prior to actually participating in the stock market game as well, did you have like any experience investing on yourself?
Um, no, I actually did not, but my dad and some other people in my family are very like tapped into the market. They listen to CNBC all the time, and they've shared some like key investing principles with me too. And I've also done a lot of like research on my own before that, um, and that honestly did help me.
Got it.
That's great to hear. So moving on, with projects like Coursify, Gymify, Hoop Hub, and LearnDesk, one common thing is they've been award-winning at hackathons you've attended. How do you approach a hackathon so you're just not coding, but creating something long-lasting and truly award-worthy?
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to the creating something long lasting, um, I honestly personally have the belief that anything can become long lasting and truly award worthy if you put in the effort into it. So, you know, everybody like the most common hackathon project is some sort of vision model that can help you sort trash. And everyone does that. If you go to any hackathon, you'll see at least like two or three teams doing that. How you create something that's long lasting and, as you said, truly award worthy is by going beyond just doing that. You start with that baseline, but it's okay. What's the next step? What can we do to make this app that we created look different from the other two teams that are doing this also today, or all the teams in the past have done that today? And so, for this example, what I would do is I'd sit there, I'd brainstorm for like an extra, like maybe 20 minutes, even thinking about, okay, how can we separate this? What additional features can we add onto this? Maybe like you know, the Spotify rap style where it'll like tell you after the whole year, like, okay, here are your stats. This is how much you composted, this is how much you recycled, something along those lines. It's all about just continually taking time to reflect and taking time to keep stacking things on top of each other and just go from a baseline project to something, as you said, long lasting and award worthy.
I actually do want to ask a follow-up question to that. So, like, for ETDM, you mentioned you put on a show to impress the judges and like kind of entertain them. Did you employ the same strategy at these hackathons to present your own idea to like make them seem more appealing or interesting?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. We did do that for a lot of our hackathons. We put on a show, as we like to say. So one of the projects that you didn't mention here, but we worked on with one of my friends, or three of my friends actually. It's called Key Buddies, where you can like make music together online, kind of like a digital audio workspace, but online and collaborative. So what we did, we had 3 minutes to demo this. And so what we did was we gave the judges one computer and we had another computer. And on one computer, we put together the entire song. I think it was one of the new Taylor Swift songs. She was extremely popular at the time. And we gave the judge the other computer and they just watched as we in real time added things into the app. And then at the end, we played the song and together we all just started singing the song together with the judges. And I think they found that like really entertaining.
It's good to hear.
It's a great way to separate yourself from everyone else. All right,
Yeah.
so last but not least, we are gonna ask a question about your research experiences during your high school. So you were part of ASJP, a research program, and you actually published a paper, and it was called "Predicting College Retention Rates from Google Street View Images of Campuses." So that's a pretty unique topic. So we just want to talk about what gave you that idea and why you decided to pursue it.
For sure. I think what I really started with was I'd go to a lot of these hackathons. Some of them would be at college campuses, such as like CMU, the University of Waterloo in Canada, um, and also some college campuses nearby, like San Jose State, Santa Clara University. So going to all these colleges, some of them are known for having really happy students, some of them are not. And we're like, okay, what if that definitely has some like correlation with the demographics of students that are there and like the course loads that they have. Typically schools with higher GPAs, tend to have certain levels of like college retention. And so we're like, okay, what effect is maybe how things look and feel there do? Like, because I went to CMU and I was like, okay, it's cloudy every day. The buildings are all like, you know, pretty concrete looking, industrial, and versus you have like Stanford, on the other hand, which is like palm trees and like Spanish architecture. And we're just like, is there any sort of relation between these two things, between how something looks and how students feel in those environments? And so that's what led to our paper. We actually found that there weren't that conclusive evidence between how these campuses look and feel versus um, versus like how the students actually feel, which was pretty unique findings.
So a little bit more on that. So how did you actually figure out what the students felt? How do you record that?
Yeah, so the way that we recorded how students felt was based on college retention rates. It's pretty industry standard for measuring student satisfaction, and it's the number of students who decided to leave school after their first year.
Got it. Okay.
Makes sense. So moving on to our final section, which is lessons and opportunities for high school students. Many of our listeners are in high school, trying to figure out what really matters. From your experience, what do admissions officers value more? Awards, leadership, passion projects, or GPA?
Um, I think that the answer would be probably um, awards out of all of them. The thing with awards is that they're validation from someone else, and oftentimes that someone else has put in even more effort and attention into reading your projects or whatever you've put together. And um, to provide more evidence of that, an admission officer usually goes through your application in what, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You guys have all heard the stats. It's always breathtaking to hear the numbers, but if they're going through it and you're asking them to make a judgment on who you are, how skilled you are at what you do, you can't really do that based on just like some projects you put together or like what leadership positions you've had, because those oftentimes just value evaluate to like what how much effort you put in and how much effort you put into like moving up in moving up in your clubs. But awards are actual validation from someone else saying, yes, this person is good at what they do, or this person is truly committed at what they did. And so that's why I think that awards are the most important.
Got it.
It's great to hear. So, on that topic, if you had to go back to your freshman year of high school and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, I'd honestly go back and tell myself to worry much less about GPA, SAT, and leadership and clubs, and just focus on what you want to do. And I know this isn't like the same thing that everyone else says, but even nowadays, no matter how much emphasis these schools are putting on SAT, GPA, ACTs, as long as you go about your path, like if you want to be academic, just be academic then. If you want to like explore things outside of school, explore things out of school. And I think sometimes I was influenced by other people to like give up certain things to focus on those SAT, GPA, um, that I sort of regret.
That makes sense. So moving on, we're gonna have a rapid fire Q&A section. So just say the first thing that comes to your mind when we ask these.
If you had to create up a startup tomorrow, what would it be about?
I'd probably do something in like the intersection of big data and artificial intelligence and marketing. I think there's a lot of growth there because of just how surefire those industries are in terms of creating actual value for companies.
Nice. What's one book or resource you'd recommend to high schoolers?
I'd honestly recommend Zero to One by Peter Thiel. It's a pretty classic book, and it's pretty tailored to the startup industry. But I think there's a lot that you can take outside of that too.
That's great. What's your morning routine like?
Uh, I usually just wake up, brush my teeth, eat a couple bananas, and be on my way. Pretty simple.
Nice. If you weren't in tech or finance, what completely different career would you be in?
Honestly, I think what really I would want to be in is sports analytics or sports management. I think those are like two very, very interesting careers.
That's great. And describe your leadership style in 3 words.
Uh, Fun, energetic, and loose.
That's great.
Nice, nice. So, moving on to the final section, closing thoughts and advice. So, Mithil, before we wrap up, what's one final piece of advice you'd give to any high schooler listening right now who wants to create their own path and see results in front of them?
3 words, just do it. I wrote I wrote my entire essay about doing just that, but since I've been a kid, it's just always been about just doing it, um, just putting in that effort. If it's something as simple as picking up the phone and calling local businesses to, buy your product or going door to door to sell something, just do it. It's like it's not that far away. You can always achieve it.
Thank you so much, Mithil. So overall, your journey really shows that success, it doesn't start in college. It starts with persistence, curiosity, and being able to take risks. Thank you so much.
And that's it for the episode of the Insider's Guide. We'll see you next time.